Hey everyone, let's go live a minute early, because why not, right? Got my morning cup of coffee in hand. How about you? Where are you tuning in from this morning? I'd really love to know. I'm going to experiment with turning some of my overhead lights off. I wonder if that's a little better. You guys tell me in the comments if that suits you better or if it's worse. It's sometimes so difficult to tell when you're on this side of the camera, and now I am not seeing any comments. Oh gosh, what have I done wrong? There we go. All messages are visible. I'm not seeing any comments. I'm not sure. So I'm just gonna have to go with my gut instinct here and trust that it's okay. Let me just try. Light. Yeah, we're gonna leave the light on. Okay, here we go. Oh, now I'm starting to see comments. Okay, whew, I thought it was just me. I'm so worried when I start doing technical stuff like this because it's not very intuitive to me. So if it's not exactly on my beaten track, it sometimes really throws me for a loop. Hi from Pierre, South Dakota. Good morning. Hello from Connecticut, Wisconsin, Northwest Pennsylvania, Michigan. So awesome. So awesome to see you all. Okay, looks like quite a few people are here, so I'm going to get started. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about loading backing and how to achieve a square quilt without centering. So let me give you just a moment of introduction to myself so you kind of know where I'm coming from with this method. I'm Susan Smith, you're in my studio, Stitched by Susan, and my first love in quilting is what I call couch quilts. So family use quilts, gifts for babies, for toddlers, for college graduates, for young couples. And so I love to do freehand edge-to-edge quilting, meaning the same thing is quilted over the whole quilt top. There's not different things in different blocks and different borders and etc. That's custom quilting. So with that in mind, all these years that I've been quilting for clients, that's the kind of quilts I do. So it's important to me to be able to do them quickly and efficiently and do as many as I can to keep the price the best I can for my customers. And that's just kind of who I am too. I like to do a thing really well, but I also like to do it as efficiently as I can. So my loading system uses that philosophy. And if you've watched my live and unscripted episodes at all, you see I often show the loading process, and it's a little bit unusual. I don't see a ton of people doing it this way, but it involves loading a straight edge of my backing at the front of my quilt, throwing it over the rail and rolling it on. Neither one is centered. I don't center any area of the quilt before I start. All that matters is that I get it where it's efficient for me to work based on the size of the quilt. And I just start at one side and go to the other. So, a couple of important points though, and the most important point is that your first edge is straight because you're going to rely on having that edge perfectly straightened up, having your fabric go over the rails without wrinkles. You don't want it twisted this way and that, right? Or pulled tighter in one direction. But if you get it laying fairly smoothly, then the act of pulling and rolling from this side acts with a little bit of resistance from the rail. Maybe I'll throw a piece of fabric over and you can kind of see it. I have to stay close to the phone for the microwave, or for the microphone. So I can't run around and do this for you, but I'll show it as best I can. This little backing has a selvage edge, so I know that is straight. So if I load that on my front rail, let's pretend it's loaded. I'll have to pull it over a bit so it sticks. And then my fabric goes over. If I have it smoothed out nicely, as best as I can reach, smoothed out nicely, there's no creases pulling it wonky in any direction, then the act of rolling from this side, coupled with the resistance of the fabric pulling over that rail, keeps it rolling on straight, and it does all the work for you. It is seriously like magic. So one of the huge time savers is you only need the one straight edge. So if your sides are a little bit wonky, if there's a seam, for example, across and one end is a 1/2 inch longer, or if your far end is a little bit wavy, you don't have to square up any of that. You just roll it on. And when your edge gets near to the leader at the far end, let a little bit hang over, let any excess or awkwardness or waviness hang over, clip either your pin system or your red snapper system, whatever you're using, along the straight leader and roll it up and you're done. And any of that awkward or unsquareness is just taken up in the rolling and gets trimmed off later. It's a little bit magical, I'll tell you. I should put a disclaimer in here too, though. I always joke, you ask any two quilters a thing and you'll get 3 opinions. That is certainly true of loading. So I think it's safe to say there is not a right and a wrong way to load a quilt. There's a lot of ways to load a quilt backing. And different machine manufacturers all have their recommended ways too. And absolutely, you should listen to them, you should explore them, and maybe even give them a try. But also you should watch what other people are doing and see if it will work for you too. That's what I did. So way back when, there was a video called Loading Lori's Way. Still on YouTube, you can watch it if you like. She goes through this same method in a lot more detail. She based her entire quilt from top to bottom, but that's where I originally got this idea of just attaching one straight edge and letting the tension on the fabric do the work of keeping the thing straight for me and just rolling it on. Net result is I can load a queen-sized backing in about 6 minutes. Whether it's wrinkly or not, whether it has seams or not, whether it's been pressed flat or not, or is square or not, is not really a factor. So I should say too, it's not millimetric precision. So for example, if you're quilting a silk, gorgeous something, I don't even know what details to give it because I don't typically do that kind of quilting. But if you want it to be perfectly on grain, maybe you have to take other measures, I'm not sure, to square up your backing or to get it on grain. I do know that with 108-inch wide backings, they're known for being troublesome in terms of being stretched wonky off grain. They're folded 4 times on a bolt. Often the cut at the store when you purchase it is crooked. So those you might have to tweak a little more. But here's one of my tips for getting rid of wrinkles, and it helps also with those wonky backings. And that is to keep a spritzer, just a water bottle spritzer handy. And for all the types of fabric that I use, which are generally 100% cotton, or else they might be repurposed sheets from the 70s. But anyway, things that are color fast, right? I don't press my backings. As I get that first side fixed in place, I just take my spritzer and I lightly mist it. And in areas where there's stubborn folds, like where there was a fold from the bolt of the fabric from the store, mist a little more there. And just that act of adding a little moisture relaxes the creases enough that you don't have to press a backing. So if you're working with 108-inch wide, sometimes that act of misting will help you be able to manipulate the fabric a little bit too. And I can't really give you full guidelines on that. Know your fabric, know if it's terribly off grain, maybe you need to square that up on the floor and mist it and let it dry overnight beforehand. That's a longer process. But for the purposes of the average quilt, rolling it on is all you need to do. It is so genius. My phone is running low of power here. So side story. Last night I was home, my husband is away, so I was home on my own and the power went out at about 9:30 and it never came on again until this morning. So it was a candlelit evening and of course I couldn't power up my phone until the power came back on. So that's gonna keep me short this morning because I've got like 18% power left, so we can't go too long. But let's see if comments are coming in. They are showing up now, but somehow they're not scrolling like they usually do. So I'm just gonna scroll back. Let's see. Connecticut, Wisconsin, Ohio, California, Florida. Hi, Susan from Athabasca, Alberta. I know right where that is, Angela. Sarah in Raleigh, North Carolina. Kansas City, Missouri. Tracy in Iowa. This is so awesome. First time catching the live from Ohio, Vermont, Kentucky. This is so great. Okay. Kathleen, used your way recently and love it. Saved me so much angst and time. Oh, it's just a massive, massive time saver and so easy. Again, I'll underline it again. This is for your average family use couch quilts that don't need millimetric precision. However, I'm going to talk tomorrow in part 2 about ways that I keep the top square as I'm quilting. And then in a later day, I'm going to talk about how I trim up the quilts after they're totally finished. And it is safe to say that even the largest quilts, my end result is within a 1/4 inch of square, always. And that has to do with multiple things: how I load it, how I baste it, how I deal with wonkiness as I quilt, how I trim it up when it's all finished. So those all build into creating a square and flat finished product. So I'll talk about as many of those different elements as I can think of and fit in these morning lives. So for those of you who might be new today, I am coming onto YouTube live like this, very casually, every day in the month of April. Feel free to email me, info@stitchedbysusan.com, or even drop comments into the, below the show if you've got topics that you'd like to hear about. I don't know everything, but I'm happy to have the conversation and share what I have learned from experience. So let's see. Sue is asking, what kind of ruler or tape measure is on the dead bar and how do you use it? Great question, Sue. Let me move this so you can see. So it is a longarmer's tape measure. They're available on Amazon, probably at any quilting shop as well. What I think makes them unique is, number one, they're really, really long, like 14 feet. And number two, they do have a 0, boop, boop. There's a 0 in the middle and it counts out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The idea being that you would center your quilt on it. I don't really use it in that way, but I attached it to my dead bar with just double-sided 3M sticky tape. I just put pieces all along it and attached it on there. Because when I am quilting, this is one of my steps for getting a square quilt. I take note when I load the quilt of where the left and right measurements are. So say it's 34 at this end and 36 3/4 at that end. Now I know every time I advance my quilt, look for 34, look for 36 3/4, right? That's one of the steps that helps me get a square result when the whole thing is done. Tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about measuring the quilt top, particularly if it's wonky. What measurement are you going to take of all the ones that are available to you, and how are you going to achieve a square quilt with that? That is my zone of genius, dealing with wonky, crazy quilts. So we'll talk about that some more. Let's see if there are any more questions before I go. Kathleen from Pennsylvania, but traveled to Virginia for Easter and family. Happy Easter to everyone, by the way. I know this is a busy weekend. It is for me too. And tomorrow, I'm not sure when I'll get on air. It's probably going to be later in the day because at my church, they're offering cinnamon buns before and after service. And guess who's baking them? That would be me. Now, I'm not making them totally from scratch, although I love doing that too, but I have to produce 600. So I purchased ready-made frozen ones. So I have to, thaw them, rise them, bake them, frost them, that sort of thing. Judy is asking, do you put binding on while it's on the long arm? Another great question, Judy. I know how to do it. I do it occasionally, but I have done it so often at my domestic machine and I have such a good setup, where to rest my quilt and all of that. I find it faster for me personally there, but you can attach binding to the front of a quilt at the long arm. And I think you could probably get really efficient at that too. So options, we all have options. Okay, I'm gonna go, you guys, but before I do, I want to invite you to a live workshop that's coming up next Saturday, so a week from today. It's called 5 Myths That Tie Freehand Quilters in Knots, and in parentheses, and how to break free of them. I hear just so often from quilters, I could never do that, or I've always wanted to do that, but I don't know where to start, or I'm not an artist. So I'm gonna take some of those myths, I'm gonna bring a bunch of pictures and examples and talk fast because that's what I do, and just bust those myths and just show you that if you want to quilt freehand from the front of your machine, you absolutely can. Here's how. So I welcome you to that. It is next Saturday. I've put a link right below the description of this episode, a link for registering for it, and then you'll get emails and a little workbook that's available for you to take notes and all those sorts of things. Linda, possible future topic, a path for meandering across the quilt. Good topic, Linda. Maybe if I had one loaded, I could show you. My trick is that I have to stay close to my camera for you to be able to hear me. I can't really be walking around as I do through some of my other episodes because I'm not on a microphone. So I'll see what I can do with that. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Whatever you are doing today, I hope you enjoy it thoroughly. I'm off to take a little walk in the sunshine, and I will see you tomorrow.